Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Art and Science of NPD. We're going to be starting in just a few moments, but before we get started with our amazing roundtable, we wanted to do a little bit of housekeeping. My name is Helen Timothy. I'm with Trace Gaines, and I will be facilitating this session. So if you have any questions, first off, for our roundtable participants, please put them in the chat as they pop into your head, and we will, at the end of the session, go through those and get as many answered as we possibly can. If we don't get to your question though, we will be available after the session, and all of our participants will be available to connect with through the platform, and we'll also share their communication mode at the end. So if you do experience any audio or visual issues, please feel free to mention it in the chat and I'll do my best to help troubleshoot with you. And additionally, if you have any issues, you can also submit a ticket by clicking on the support tab, and that will help you with your experience as well. During the session, we would really appreciate your participation. We also have some polls in the second tab that you can participate with. It's a fun way to interact with the session and with our speakers. And additionally, after the session, we'll be distributing a survey. You can also find this survey underneath your presentation window. And if you take that, it just really helps us improve our content and really better cater to you and your needs. So today's session is the Art and Science of NPD Roundtable, and our moderator is Trace Gaines Senior VP of Revenue, Mike Hubbard. So Mike, without further ado, let's dig on in.
Well, perfect. I assume I'm good to go here. All right. Well, welcome everybody. Again, my name is Mike Hubbard. I'm the Senior Vice President of Revenue at Trace Gaines, and I'm the moderator for today's session, the Art and Science of New Product Development. Our first panelist is Gary Nowacki, who is Trace Gaines' Chief Executive Officer. Gary has over 30 years experience in the CPG industry, developing and deploying technology solutions. One of his biggest accomplishments is building one of the world's largest CPG business networks. Thank you, Gary, for joining us today. Our next panelist is Doug Berg, Vice President, Group Manager, Product Development for Madson. Doug joined Madson in 1992 and has worked on nearly every food category and consumer need since he began his career in food innovation. As a Vice President Group Manager, Doug leads a team of food scientists and culinary product developers. Doug is a member of the Research Chefs Association and the Institute of Food Technologists. Thank you, Doug, for joining us today. Our third panelist is Greg Hartman. Greg is Trace Gaines' Vice President of Product Management and has over 20 years experience in technology and digital media. He joined Trace Gaines from Health Notes, where he led all aspects of strategy and product development to include customer success. Thank you, Greg, for joining us today. To get started with our roundtable discussion, our first question will go to Doug. Doug, can you tell us about Madson and the company's overall strategy and what differentiates you?
Yeah, hi, Mike. So Madson is one of the largest independent new food and beverage product development companies in North America. We've been around since 1977, and we're located in the heart of Silicon Valley and the crossroads of San Francisco and the wine country, where culinary is really important. I manage a team of about 7, as you mentioned, product developers, food scientists, and culinary technicians. And we work on every food category you can think of, from retorted to food service to shelf stable. So yeah, we're the go-to. We also bring not just the food science, but we bring the culinary and we bring the commercialization, and we also bring consumer insights and strategies. So we're the go-to to provide everything for innovation.
Well, very good. Thank you, Doug. Can you share with us one of the most challenging, memorable new product development projects you worked on while at Madson?
Sure. It's really hard to go into specifics due to client confidentiality, but yep. I'd say generally the hardest, most challenging projects are when someone comes to us and they want to match something or knock off a product that's already on the market. we've worked on something recently where we didn't even have access to an ingredient statement or nutritional panel. We just had to look at the product and figure out what's in it and how to match it. So it was really, really challenging. Yeah, that's the biggest kind of challenge.
Well, very good. Very, very interesting. So thank you. So Greg, I know that you've talked to dozens and dozens of companies about product development. And what are some of their challenges that they're telling you?
Yeah, I think talking across all these companies, the key themes that stand out are around collaboration and visibility. In the broadest sense, this would be collaboration within internal collaboration, but also externally with vendors and suppliers. And it's not so much that collaboration isn't currently taking place, but it's a lot of time spent on base level administrative tasks, things like searching for information, making and waiting for requests to be fulfilled, reviewing past work, keying in information, routing reviews, routing for reviews, all these tasks that need to take place where a lot of time and effort is being sunk before even understanding if a concept is viable or not, right? And the result is that you're spending less time and energy on the winning products. So one of the challenges that we're really looking at addressing across our platform is trying to automate a lot of that low-level collaboration, requesting and digging for information, trying to understand the latest changes and revisions across the company, so companies can emphasize areas where high-value collaboration can take place.
Very good. Thank you. Gary, in your monthly Concept to Consumption podcast, you've interviewed a lot of movers and shakers in our industry. A lot of influences are in our industry. What are some of the common challenges that you hear from them?
The short answer is it takes too long. It just cycle times for new product development, 6 to 15 to 18 months, taking too long. McKinsey did a study several years ago where they tracked over a 4-year period of time new product introductions, and then they went back at the end of that 4-year period and said, how many of these products are still out there on shelves and so on? And 3 out of 4 were gone. So, companies necessarily don't have magic pixie dust to forecast what product's going to take off like a rocket ship and what's going to fail. And so if you are taking too long to get new products out there, you're failing too slowly, because you will fail on some of your products, maybe 75% of them. And so the idea is if you can compress those cycle times for new product development down, you're going to get more swings at the plate. And that's what companies are looking for.
Very good. Thank you, Gary. Doug, back at you. Madson has helped a lot of companies launch successful products. And so with your team, what are some of the challenges that you commonly run into that you've got to overcome?
I think the biggest challenge for my team is really, when you get started, finding the ingredients to demonstrate your product. If it's organic, finding the organic ingredients. Really, it's the functional ingredients. It's the gums, it's the stabilizers, it's stabilizing protein. There's a lot of food science that goes into it. And a client might say, well, I want a protein beverage, but I want it organic. Well, then you run into challenges of making sure that the functional ingredients that do protect the protein, for instance, are organic compliant. So that's a big challenge. The other challenge is we can do almost anything on the bench, in small scale, but the real big challenge is finding a partner who can commercialize the product. So it's finding a co-man and bringing them on the journey. They have to be part of the equation. They have to want to understand your story and to be on the journey with you through the whole process.
Well, very good. I think that's a good segue. Gary, my next question is going to go to you. During your keynote, you talked about a big idea, network product development, not new product development, but network product development. What does this mean to you, and how does it uniquely help Doug and other companies in our industry overcome some of these key challenges that we talked about?
Well, you know, Greg and his team talked to over a dozen of our customers in multiple, many iterative sessions as we started to build this formula management product. And what they've heard repeatedly is that a large percent of the data that companies need for new product development lives outside the four walls of their company, maybe 80% to use an approximate number. And so the way companies are dealing with that and always have dealt with that is inefficiently through, you know, bricks and mortar trade shows where you have to walk miles of aisles and collect those business cards. That's not to disparage those conferences. Those conferences are important for relationships, to taste sample products, all those sorts of things, but it's not an efficient way to find new suppliers like or new ingredients like Doug was talking about. So network product development at its foundation says, let's connect the whole supply chain. Let's get these thousands and thousands of suppliers out there connected so that you can search their catalogs, find just the ingredients that you want. Once you have found a list of potential suppliers for that new ingredient, for that new killer product, you can vet those suppliers very quickly, narrow it down, bring purchasing involved, and then it's also internal network. It's being able to collaborate internally through workflow so that nothing falls through the cracks, because there are so many processes and so many sub processes, like I talked about during my keynote earlier today, where things just can fall through the cracks or get behind. You know, you got 5 departments involved. Well, 4 of them are right on schedule, one's way behind. Does everybody know that? Do we know why they're behind? So taking that network concept both outside of your 4 walls to the whole supply chain, and then using it within your company to knock through those silos, we think that's going to compress product development cycles.
Wonderful. Thank you, Gary. Greg, as a chief architect in building this new concept, this new big idea, network product development, what does it mean to you? And how do you see it helping companies launch more successful products?
Yeah, I'll echo what Gary just said. I think it's primarily about acceleration and agility without sacrificing quality, right? It allows teams access to the right information sooner, so decisions can be made more quickly. It means having, you know, immediate access to options for new ingredients, new suppliers, and making sure that you're getting the information from that network that align with your product requirements and your quality standards. So you just heard Doug say, you know, one of the challenging aspects is, can I get my hands on the right ingredient, and is it meeting, you know, the specific claims and requirements I'm going to need? So being able to have access, reliable access to that information and a network will, you know, increase your agility and your speed. One of the interesting things about the pandemic, I think, that it's exposed is that, you know, while you can have a very robust, efficient supply chain, and it can also, that robust supply chain can also create brittleness for your company if you need to make a shift and a quick pivot for some reason, whether or not that there's a disruption in that supply chain. So having and building in agility into that efficiency, I think, is really important. Having a network of vendors, brands, manufacturers, all working on a common platform provides companies increased visibility and access to their options, right? All through the product lifecycle process.
Well, very good. Thank you, Greg. We know it takes a team, you know, to launch a successful product. It's a very challenging process. It takes a team. Generally, they're globally dispersed. Doug, you know, the next question is to you. What roles, departments do you feel are absolutely critical to participate in a new product launch?
Well, I'll speak to the development part of it, the creating the product, if you will. It's really important to not just have just come out with a new product. You have to involve strategic people. You have to involve that department. What are you trying to do? You know, you have to involve consumer insights. You have to make sure that you're meeting the need of that specific target. And then of course, R&D, you know, we're on the bench creating the thing. Here's the idea on a piece of paper, we're creating the thing. So obviously my perspective, because what I do is R&D is really critical. And then, you know, like I mentioned earlier, the commercialization and the bringing it, you know, making the product, manufacturing the product. And then all the departments around that is, you know, procurement of the ingredients and the QA to make sure it does meet your specifications. So it takes a village for sure.
Well, very good. Greg, with the interviews you've done, are you hearing the same thing? What roles people need to be involved to successfully launch a product?
Yeah, too easy for me to say all roles. You know, it's funny, talking to these companies, talk to many companies where working with the different departments, I hear a lot of frustration in those departments when they're talking about other departments as well, saying that frustration is typically around something like, you know, that other department doesn't stay in their lane, they don't follow the same rules we have to follow, you know, there's miscommunication among departments, and, you know, it's anything, you know, it could be between quality and procurement, it could be between R&D and marketing, it's anywhere in an organization. And I think it's also fairly natural, right? Each department is focused on their outcomes and their deliverables in that process, right? So I think those charters can be different between departments, right? There's cost quality trade-offs. But I would say, you know, as those departments come together, the best projects that I've heard of with these companies is when, as Doug was just mentioning, there's strong, clear information up front and it's coordinated early. So meaning there's clear product objectives, there's detailed requirements, and that can set these teams off in parallel because ultimately these teams feed each other, right? One feeds deliverables into the next so you can move the project downstream. And the sooner each of those departments can feed those critical points, the sooner you can make the call on whether or not, you know, this is a project we want to go forward with, you know, and how far, all those stage gates that happen. It was interesting, I was listening into an earlier session with Lassonde on collaboration, and they were going through how their department is accessing various data points in the TraceGains platform that they're using across their organization. And they touched on every department in an organization, from procurement, R&D, quality, marketing, all across the organization, all the way into operations, obviously. So it was, I think, you know, I would say all roles.
Very good, very good. Hey, Gary, as a technologist, how do you see technology bringing these different roles and departments together, sometimes globally dispersed, to make them more effective?
Well, it's probably worth saying, what are people doing with technology today for new product development? And based on all the companies we've talked to and studied, probably the most common answer is Microsoft Office. You know, we're using documents like Word and PDFs that we use to both author things like specifications to send out to suppliers or to socialize internally. We're using Excel spreadsheets to keep track of tasks and make sure that the project keeps moving. And then we're just pounding the heck out of Microsoft Outlook, sending all these emails around to suppliers. Hey, we pinged you a week ago, we still don't have those documents. Hey, we pinged you a week ago, we still don't know if you can meet the technical specs we have in mind for this new ingredient. Is it organic, whatever? You know, sending it around to internal teams. What's going on? Are you guys in purchasing and regulatory signed off on this yet? New product development and QA is good with it, but we can't move forward without you guys. So that's what's happening with so many companies today. And being able to take all that workflow and put it into network product development again, for both all the people and the departments and the silos you deal with internally, as well as all the external constituents, not just the ingredient suppliers, but the co-mans in many cases and other people as well. Being able to, get everybody on the same page with technology, that's the leap forward that I think this industry's been looking for. And people are doing it kind of the same way they've done it over the last 25 or 30 years. So I think the industry is ready for a technology leap forward.
Very good. Thank you, Gary. They say that a new product development process is a company's competitive advantage. Doug, this question is to you. How important is it to follow a rigid NPD process, and can process stifle innovation?
It's important to have a foundation. You need to know, I brought this up before, and I think we've mentioned, organic keeps coming up, but, it's really important to set the goals of the product. It's really important to know the restrictions on the ingredients. It's important to know what cost target you're trying to reach. It's important to know what nutritional target you're trying to reach. And then it's like, who is the product for? Is it for Walmart or is it for Whole Foods? So it's really important to have those basic guidelines. However, you're right. Too much of that can stifle the creativity. If you're spending all this time, well, I can't find that ingredient that meets all these requirements. Sometimes you just have to start the development and know long-term, hey, I can substitute this out later, or, one of my suppliers says, well, we're going to have this ingredient online next year, so you're anticipating what you can make substitutions for. So, the successful developers are ones that can see the vision or see past that and just get the stuff done, get the product to the client, say, is this what you want? And then worry about some of the details later.
Very good. Thank you, Doug. I appreciate that. The next question, Greg, is to you. The companies that you've interviewed and the processes particularly related to new product development, what do you see as the most important steps that you've got to get right to successfully launch a product?
It's funny. I don't have the strongest point of view on this one. And in particular, it's because in my role, I talk to everyone across the company, and I'm trying to understand, each touching point in the process. And what I've found is, every step has its challenges, and every step has its impact downstream to the success of the product. That said, as kind of the similar themes that keep coming up, if you don't start with strong objectives and know where you want to go, it's hard to get there, right? So having those objectives, that robust set up front, that the team can start moving to gather the right types of information and activities that they're going to need to do in all the following subsequent steps. Right? Because you want to know just as quickly of when can we kill this project because we can't meet the objectives based on all the factors that we have, as much as moving forward with a project, right? I'm a product person. I've been a product person forever, so I love the innovation side of product development. But I also very much appreciate the fact that ideas are only as good as a company's ability to deliver them to market. So.
Well, very good. And so I think another process that I want you to touch on briefly, Greg, is you have new product development, you iterate a lot, but there's also a lot of changes. And so there's a change management process that a lot of customers in our industry have to deal with. And can you share any insights on what some important steps have to happen to do change management in an effective way?
Yeah. Change management is all about visibility, right? Knowing what's changing and what does it affect, right? So a company needs the ability, well, let's take an example, right? So a company for some reason needs to change from their primary supplier to a new supplier, let's say because of disruption in the supply chain of some means or whatnot, this could trigger an updated nutrition profile of that ingredient that that supplier just gave you. Okay, well, now a company needs to understand what the effects of that new nutrition profile are across the organization. Do we need to change this specification? What formulas is this ingredient tied to? What finished goods do they affect that those formulas are tied to? Does the label need to be reviewed and changed in any other declarations made? The best visibility you can have is if you can tie those data elements together so that when a change happens upstream, you understand all the areas that it's going to affect throughout the company. Another interesting example that we heard from one company is early on in the ideation process, there was a lot of vetting of different ingredients, new ingredients that they were going to use in the process. And during that vetting process, they take a lot of notes as they go to the bench, and they, come back and say, this ingredient is going to work, that ingredient's not going to work. Capturing all that information of how a particular ingredient gets selected and then used, if there's ever a change to that particular ingredient, all that history of innovation can be accessed. So you don't go through the same vetting process, and you already know why the ingredients that you set aside, right? You don't have to do that again. A lot of companies that we were talking to don't capture that type of information easily. So when you do have a change process of we need to move from ingredient A to ingredient X, what have you already done? So you don't have to redo it again.
Very good. Very good. Thank you, Greg. Gary, a tough question for you. We talked about process, the importance of executing a process, and while still not stifling innovation. So how can technology help you execute processes while still enhancing creativity?
Well, I think there's an analogy that a lot of Trace Gains customers are going to be able to relate to, which is for the last 10 years, we've been really helping folks in quality, regulatory, safety, freeing them up from chasing paper and from doing all that paperwork stuff that goes along with it. Yeah. And, these folks, by and large, they've got college degrees in microbiology and food science, technology, and things like that. And, you're not paying these folks, very nice salaries based on their tremendous skills to go chase paper. And so we've solved a lot of that problem over the last 10 years with things like supplier management. And so now take that same analogy and think, boy, if we could apply that to all the folks in R&D who are the creative types, who are coming up with great ideas for new products and who just want to move fast, they don't have to chase down potential suppliers, potential ingredients, make these phone calls, do the follow-up emails. Do you have what I need? And so on and so forth. Now they can plug into this network and quickly find the right suppliers and ingredients, quickly see the documents, open them up. I'm building an organic snack bar. Is your, rolled oats ingredient, is that organic? It is, great. What's the country of origin? Because that's also important to me. Great. On a different ingredient, what's the sodium content? Because, I want to hit certain sodium limits. Great. Being able to do that so much faster instead of having to chase paper and chase suppliers and all that kind of stuff, that's going to free up the R&D people for what they're trained to do and for what their real skill set is, which is innovation, not paper chasing. And companies are going to benefit so much along with that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Gary. Let's move a little bit and talk about people. We all know that you have to have great people to launch products. And Doug, your company has been very good at that. And so obviously you have to have a pretty strong point of view of the type of mindsets and qualities or the talents of people that you're looking for to recruit to your company. So can you share with us some of those qualities?
Yeah, definitely. And Gary, I agree with you 100%. We hire creative types, not people to push around paper. So you're right, it can be a big waste of time when someone can be creative on the bench. We generally, as I mentioned at the very beginning, we look for people generally that have food science is number one, but any kind of living science will help too. It's important for someone to be a good problem solver, to manage multiple tasks at a time, multitasking obviously, a natural curiosity, independent and able to manage themselves. There's going to be a lot of challenges and little problems that they're going to have to make decisions on the fly. So really that kind of problem solving. And then really in my company, since, it's all about food, they have to have a passion for food and love food. It's what you have to do. You have to know how to make something taste good.
Very good. Greg, I'm going to ask you the same question. I know it's a bit different, but when you're looking for technology people that you're recruiting, what is it that you're looking for in a great innovator?
Yeah, I think I think first and foremost curiosity and kind of lifelong learning, and I think going along with curiosity and having a curious mind and open mindset is risk taking, right? If you have that mindset, you're naturally going to move into uncomfortable areas, and I think it's those uncomfortable areas that can open up new innovation and new paths or new solutions, right? That other people haven't thought of. And so I think that would be first and foremost. I think also having a mindset of collaboration, that you're in this with a team, because it's the team that's going to help you move it forward. So really having a good sense of, I know, how everyone can help me, and pulling out the best qualities of those folks around you.
Very good. Very good. Gary, another tough question to you. You're a technologist, a visionary. Talk to me about technology drivers that you see in the future that you think are going to have a big impact of helping companies innovate faster.
This industry that we serve and that we're all in, food, CPG, dietary supplements, it is the most fragmented supply chain on the planet. We have never seen a supply chain as fragmented as this. If you were in other industries, if you were doing new product development in automotive, consumer electronics, or other areas, aerospace, you would know who the suppliers are for different things, and it wouldn't be that hard. Just in the United States, there's 35,000 facilities processing food, and they're buying from tens of thousands of suppliers. And in many cases, there are intermediaries like brokers and distributors who add additional value, but cause also additional complexity in this network, in the supply chain. And so, an analogy I'll use is social media. 15 years ago, we'd go on a vacation, we'd take a bunch of pictures, we'd come back, we'd email, 20 pictures to a bunch of our friends. And some of those friends would say, I don't want to see these pictures. And other friends would say, I was thinking of going to Italy. Why didn't you send me more pictures, right? So it's highly inefficient. And other friends would say, I never saw those pictures. And you'd say, oh yeah, I forgot to send them to you. That's not what you would do anymore. You would take those pictures, you'd put them on social media once, and all your friends would see them. The friends who really wanted to look at them would, and the ones who would scroll right past them would be free to do that. That's what a network is bringing to the process. And I think that's the future. And in an earlier session today on supply chain, we heard from multiple customers like Lassonde and others that when they are doing new product development or change management of existing products, they go out to TraceGains Network and they go out to Market Hub. That's the first place they look for suppliers. And if you're a supplier who, for whatever reason, still hasn't joined TraceGains Network and put your catalog on Market Hub, you're increasingly going to be at a disadvantage to getting word out. Because what these customers have managed to do, as they were talking about in this session earlier today, is they quickly find suppliers and then they drill into them and say, oh, I want to see your documents. Let's just start the vetting process immediately. Let's start evaluating you for risk. Let's get purchasing involved, all these sorts of things. And they can quickly do that. And so I think this is the future of product development, connecting everybody on a network across this massive and highly fragmented supply chain.
Well, very good. Greg, anything you'd like to add to that? What do you think the future is going to bring from a technology standpoint?
I'll just be brief here. Yeah, I think I'll be brief. I think one of the broadest impacts in the coming years, decades, is going to be the sheer amount of data that's available and needed.
Yeah.
And I think that data, there's going to be far too many data points coming in that humans are going to fully be able to just process it all, right? And this is where I think machine learning and AI are going to start to allow companies to unearth intelligence for their businesses that they're running. So being able to apply multiple models into things as far as identifying risk in their supply chain based on global events, right? And global environmental impacts. Being able to forecast against those risks and also forecast against other opportunities, right? And mitigate any possible changes that can come. It would allow you to, those models can allow you to also expose new opportunities that you didn't even know were out there based on, consumer trends that seem invisible, but given the sheer amount of data that you can pull in from all these various sources, machines can unearth that if you have really smart data scientists as well as models pulling up. So I think machine learning and AI is going to have a pretty big impact here in the coming decades.
Doug, any insights from you from a technology standpoint?
No, not from technology. I mean, I guess, again, I approach this differently. It's more about the excitement of always the new introductions of new ingredients that can solve your development challenges. So there's every year there's, a new company that has this new offering. So, and that ties into like, well, how do you find that? So, so having that whole network system and being able to find those ingredients.
Well, I'm going to ask one final question before we get to Q&A, and I'll start with you, Doug, but it'll be the same question for the other two panelists. If you could offer people or give one piece of advice to companies looking to innovate, what would it be, Doug?
I would say, don't be a follower, be a leader. Don't be a Me Too product, be a new product. But understand the market, understand what consumers want, meeting that unmet need.
Wonderful. Gary.
Sorry, go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just going to repeat the question. What advice would you give to innovate?
Yeah, so it's interesting, being on the technology side, there's a mantra across the whole tech world, and it probably started in Silicon Valley, which is fail fast. And in the technology business, there is no disgrace to failure. The only disgrace is failing slowly. And so, it goes back to get more swings at the plate, compress your lead times. Again, we don't know what the magic pixie dust is that gives you a product that's a home run versus a double versus a base hit versus a strikeout. It's hard to know until you get it out there and let consumers try it out. So fail fast, take more swings at the plate. In my recent podcast with Barb Stuckey, also of Madson, she had great examples of brilliant companies, brilliant people coming up with brilliant products that failed. And the point is, you just don't know until you get it into the hands of customers and consumers. So don't be embarrassed about failure. Be embarrassed about failing slow. So fail fast.
Very good. Greg.
Yeah, I'll reiterate that. Keep the innovation process lean and nimble, and enable your teams to do exactly what Gary said. Enable them to learn as quickly as they can, fail, and make changes and corrections as you go, or pivot to the new idea. So yeah, I just reiterate that.
Very good.
I grew up in the tech world, so that's what we do.
Yeah, very good. Well, thank you, the panelists. And now we want to leave a few minutes, Ellen, for Q&A.
Absolutely. So if you haven't already, please add any questions you have into that chat box. And I've got a quick question for Doug. Doug, I'm really curious, when you are creating a new product from start to finish, how do you and your team define success?
Really, success is so many different levels. Initially success is, do we meet all the parameters of the project internally? And then the next level of success is, does it deliver against the client's expectation and their concept? And then another level of success is, are we able to bring it, commercialize it, find a co-packer and make it, and it matches what we've developed. And then it's another level of success is, do consumers like it? And then final success is, when it's in the market, does it succeed? So there's all sorts of different stages and ways of measuring success.
Absolutely. I've got one more question that we actually had someone submit in advance of today's session. This goes, I think would be best to go to Gary or Greg. This person writes in that they're struggling to get samples from their suppliers. Their question surrounds basically, does TraceGains Network, would that help accelerate getting samples and jumping into projects? And if so, did you have any tips or tricks to kind of facilitate that?
Yeah, Greg, do you want to take that question, since you're into the details of the product every day?
Yeah, sure. We've talked about it and touched on it earlier, and this would be, Market Hub is a natural area for this. So part of requesting samples is finding the product that's going to meet your requirements in a marketplace. So you're not wasting your time trying to vet, sample, or trying to request samples if you don't know a lot about that ingredient, right? And so one of the great benefits of Market Hub is the ability to have discoverable documents on there, including product specifications, suitability requirements, country of origin, allergen profiles, nutrition profiles. All of that provides you really robust information before even contacting that supplier to say, hey, this looks like it'll work for me. Now I'm going to get in this sample, this sample, this sample. So I think part of it's just that early information gathering process. And then obviously through Market Hub, we do have the ability to contact those suppliers directly. And that contact information comes from the suppliers themselves. So you have a reliable source of contact.
Fabulous. Well, we're right up against it. So I just wanted to say thank you to all of our roundtable speakers. If any of you do have any questions that come to you in the dead of night or even just right after you exit, please feel free to reach out to Doug, Gary, Greg, or Mike, either through their email here, their phone, or you can always connect through the Pathable event site today or tomorrow. Thank you all so much for your expertise and your time, and we're really glad you all joined us. If you could really help us out, we always continue to try and improve and really tailor our target. our content to better serve you. So if you could take 2 seconds and fill out that survey that's in the window to your left, that would be really great for us. Also, we will be drawing a winner of a $50 American Express gift card every day. So the more surveys you fill out is the more chances you get to maybe win that gift card. So thank you so much for your feedback, and I hope you enjoy the rest of today. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.